Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to the very first episode of the Four Lights podcast. Many of you probably know me, probably are coming here from the Going in Raw channel. This is airing on the Friendoville channel, which is it's what I do, me and my friends, basically. And I can't think of a better friend here than Big Jeff.
I'm not bad. I'm a good friend.
Well, you were literally the best man at my. A lot of people ask.
I was.
A lot of people ask, Steve, was Larson your best man at?
Larson was there.
He was there. I wasn't his best man. Wow. Although we both agreed that if you were dead and if his brother were dead, then we would have been each other's best men.
Yeah.
So anyways, I've been talking about this podcast for a very long time. Ongoing in Raw. It's something I've been wanting to do with you for a very long time. We've known each other for an ungodly number of years.
Too many years. We're not going to date ourselves and tell you how long we've known each other.
We talk about that on Going in Raw. Like, we talk about how old we are. Because it's Larson. So, like, he like, every day it's like, oh, I'm so tired. Oh, God, I can't. I'm like, you're not that old. But no, we date ourselves quite a bit. So we've actually been friends. I've known you longer than I've known Larson.
Yeah. We knew Larson through me.
Yeah, pretty much.
We met Larson initially in a class at AR, and you guys were both like, oh, you're Jeff's friend.
Well, what's funny is that I actually met Larson. He was in my physics class.
In high school?
In high school.
Oh, okay.
I always give him shit because I was a junior and he was a senior.
Yeah.
And so I always say I'm smarter than him. He always comes back by saying, well, yeah, but you had a 32% in calculus, and I graduated with an A in calculus. So that's because I was too busy getting high and getting laid. Yeah. And then he corrects me on that because that's not actually true. So no, I've known him around the same amount of time, but just in passing. Like, you and I have been friends for a very, very long time, since my junior year of high school and your senior year of high school.
And one of the first things that we bonded over was in high school, proving that I did not get high or get laid in high school. On my jean jacket, which I have in my house still, I had a Star Trek The Next Generation communicator badge.
That's right.
Steve and I bonded over that because he noticed that, like everybody did, like all the girls did, and then subsequently just did not talk to me.
The amount of
so.
No, I mean you're saying that as a joke because like that communicator badge just brought in loads of strange, ungodly numbers of women.
I don't know about that.
We're going after that. No, I do remember. What was the dude who called you Commander Riker? Harvey.
It was, Harvey and James.
Yeah.
They were seniors.
Yeah.
I was a junior and you were a sophomore, I think, right?
In geometry class.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm smart. So anyways, you live in Los Angeles.
Yes, I do.
And you do your thing with, you're in a sketch group called Haymaker.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, it's a Pack Theater, third Wednesday every month.
If you're in LA, come check it out.
Please.
I'll put a link in the description. Me and Larson were up there. We the three of us used to be friends. We all go back. We used to be roommates.
We're still friends. We used to be roommates.
We used to be roommates. Yeah. We all went through college together, all kind of stuff. So we have a lot of history. It's been my desire to work with you on something forever.
Sure.
We did 10 years ago. 13 years ago.
Yeah.
We worked on a comic book together. We published a graphic novel together. And since Going in Raw got to the place where it's landed, and we've started to tinker with like the Friendoville channel. It was my personal YouTube channel for a spell, and now I'm kind of redoing it into Friendoville because I've got like a bunch of other things I want to work on with other people and with Larson. Larson's thing is he wouldn't come on my channel because it was my personal channel, and he says, well, if I'm on any of your shows, then that's just going to go on our channel because we have a channel together, which logically kind of makes sense.
Sure.
But that channel is specifically for wrestling content. And so I said, okay, it's no longer my personal channel. I'll make it the Friendoville channel, where it's just stuff that we do that we want to do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we want to do Going in Raw.
Because you guys are both interesting people with interest in things outside of wrestling.
We're well-rounded nerds.
Well-rounded people.
Well-rounded, exactly. And so I thought that, number one, I always wanted to do something Star Trek related because, God, I'm a friggin' nerd. And then number two, the one thing, like, one of the many things that you and I can just sit and do endlessly is laugh over Star Trek, specifically The Next Generation.
Yeah.
we can sit there, and I mean, we can do that with pretty much any TV show. We can sit there and watch like anything, but Next Generation, because we've known it for such a long time, it's something that we know back and forth really, really well, and we can sit there and just clown on it endlessly. And so I just thought to myself, I bet nobody out there is reviewing every single episode of Next Generation on the internet. That's totally untrue, because there's like a couple other podcasts that do that, but I don't really care, because this gives me an opportunity to do two things. Number one, visit you more often.
Great.
And not all of these are going to be done, you and I, in person.
Sure.
But I hope that a great number of them will be. And number two, just work on something with you, to do something with you. Why not, right? I mean, we're both, we've got probably the same number of years ahead of us as we have behind us.
True.
And
hopefully, fingers crossed.
So, I mean, look, man, I'd like to live till I'm 150, but it's probably not going to happen. And so that's the genesis of this. It's just, hey, let's sit down and talk about Star Trek. And I was kind of surprised, but not really surprised, that a lot of the Going In Raw audience, they've been bugging me about this ever since I started talking about, I'm going to do this thing with Jeff. We call you Big Jim on the show, but I always slip up and say Jeff.
Sure.
So truth exposed now, Big Jim is Jeff.
His face belongs to Big Jim and Big Jeff.
Exactly.
I'm sorry that you have to look at it right now.
So here we are. The pilot episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. That's what we're going to talk about in this episode.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I'm really determined to make this a weekly podcast. So we're filming like the first 4 episodes. A little piece of shit on me. So anyways, Star Trek: Encounter at Farpoint.
Yeah.
I think it originally aired as a 2-part movie, but then subsequent airings it airs as a 2-parter.
Yeah, so I was curious if this is actually a pilot in the truest sense of the word, because I thought that it was syndicated. So I thought that they just shot a bunch of episodes and had a sales deal already.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Paramount has a lot of stroke.
Yeah.
Like, it was Paramount. So
Sure.
I would imagine they probably... I honestly, I don't know. I didn't do any research in terms of the production of this. I did some research on the production of like a couple of the other episodes. Yeah. But here's the thing. I do know this, that Star Trek, I mean, I know, here's one of the funny things. I probably at one time did know the genesis of this.
Yeah.
And then I totally forgot it because I had the Star Trek companion book.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I didn't want to spend the entire podcast talk, because there is an extensive backstory to like the genesis of the Next Generation. I know before they did Star Trek the motion picture, they had wanted to do something called Star Trek Phase 2.
Yes.
Which a lot of the ideas from that not only ended up, like they took, during the writer's strike, for example, they took some of the scripts from that and they did it for Next Generation. They also took some of the ideas from Phase 2 and just started putting them into the motion picture, the Star Trek motion picture.
But Phase 2 was supposed to be a continuation of the original show.
Yeah, right.
With
it was
a lot of the same characters.
Right, exactly,
just sort of a couple years down the line.
Right. I don't know when they determined to do something that was, I think this is set like 80 years after the original. And I don't know like what exactly, what the deal with that was. However, It kicked. It's one of the reasons why I also was really into the idea of doing a Star Trek Next Generation review show is because I like doing something. It's similar to wrestling. It has a really, really cheap, easy point of entrance for anybody who even isn't into Star Trek.
Yeah,
that's one thing that I've actually gotten questions on, because I talk about it a bunch on wrestling on Going In Raw. People ask, "Hey, where would I start if I want to get into Star Trek?" And it's an interesting question. I'm not exactly sure. My answer generally these days is start with Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan. Mm-hmm. Go 2, 3, 4, and then start. If you really just want to get into Star Trek Next Generation, maybe just start at Season 2, Episode 1. Because Season 1 is really weird.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weird stuff going on.
Well, see, I'm not a big fan of Season 2 either. Like, I'd usually just tell people to start with Season 3.
You know what's funny? So Season 3 is you're guaranteed. Yeah. Well, you're guaranteed you're going to get some quality stuff. Yeah. But Season 2 has a surprisingly large number of good episodes.
Yeah.
Like the first episode of The Borg is on there.
Okay.
What else is in there? The one where Picard has to defend... No. Yeah, Picard has to defend Data's right not to be dismantled.
Yeah.
That's a really good... He has like a really good speech in there. But Season 1 has some like really bizarre... I mean, every I mean, virtually every TV show, nobody really thinks, oh, season 1 is their best one.
No.
Like me.
It's rare.
Yeah, it's rare that like it takes time to find your footing.
Sure.
So anyways, let's just get into it. I have so what we're going to basically do is just break down each episode. We wrote down notes for each of these episodes. We have them in front of us. Encounter at Farpoint. The very first thing we see. And the funny thing is, so I think all the episodes that are out there for streaming now, they're all the remastered ones.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not really going to comment on, oh, wow, that planet looks fantastic. Yeah, because they did it in, like, 2012.
Yeah.
So, like, not 1987. So, like, a lot of the effects. But I like that with the remasters, they were relatively subtle with how they were doing stuff.
Sure.
They weren't going overboard. The very first shot we get of the Enterprise D is like a really, really amazing sweeping shot of it. It's like coming straight at the camera. You're kind of low and it goes over like this. And it looks really great. I was kind of struck with and we get Picard's voiceover. Mm-hmm. First thing we see is him lurking in the shadows, I think near engineering.
Yeah.
Like he's talking about he gets to tour the Enterprise first. And then like the first thing we get is like a zoom in, not a zoom in, but it's like a track in on Picard. And he's like sort of lurking in the shadows in engineering.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. There's a couple things they do in this episode that I don't think they really do much elsewhere throughout the course of the show.
Stylistically, it is completely different from like the groove that they eventually get into.
Yeah, and again, I think that you can write that off to them just sort of finding their footing.
Yeah.
But there's a weird mini lift that they have in engineering that just goes up one flight that Picard rides a couple times during the course of his voiceover, and I kept on looking at it. It was so distracting to me because I'm like, it's just, why doesn't he walk up a flight of stairs? It's just, and it's just the slowest lift too. So
it takes so long to get up there. Yeah,
it's like somebody riding up one of the back the elevator things at the back of a moving van.
Right.
It's so slow, and he's just standing there, and it's just going like that.
Yeah. What struck me, so like you and I, again, getting back to like our history, you, me, Larson, and Hilton, who a lot of people think is a mythical creature at this point, because the running joke on Going In Raw is I'll say, Hilton, hit the music, and I hit my little Stream Deck thing that hits the music, and then Larson will always say, Hilton's not here, man. And I'm like, God, he's terrible. He's not even doing it. And I do. And so Hilton, like a lot of people don't even know if Hilton's real or not. There is literally a question that we got that said, is Hilton a real human being? And then me and Larson just sit there for a second and think, well, he's a person.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyways, we all went to film school together.
Yep.
So obviously you and I, we noticed these things. The second shot that we get is a handheld shot in engineering.
Yes.
So it's like NYPD Blue Ops. It's weird.
Shaky.
It's very shaky. And he walks past and immediately we see the weird skirt uniform that they had. Because like season 1, it was either you're wearing a skirt, like a one-piece skirt, or you have like the tightest. Like they're like
it's like a unitard almost.
Yeah, they're like almost
it's just
spandexy.
a one piece.
Yeah,
and it's the shirt is part of the pants and it's very tight.
It reveals everything.
Oh yeah, it looks very uncomfortable.
You can tell like by season 3, Riker is completely relaxed because he's like he can let it out a little bit.
Well, by season 3 they had the outfit that was a separate shirt.
Shirt, yeah,
so
exactly.
You could actually breathe a little.
Exactly.
Oh, I don't know how they did that unitard.
So, anyways, Picard gets to the bridge. We get to see the bridge for the first time.
Yeah.
Him and Data start talking about the episode immediately. Mm-hmm. They're like, hey, what a crazy adventure we're about to go on. We're about to go to the mystery of Farpoint Station. We're about to have an encounter at Farpoint.
Yes, it's very clumsy. They desperately want to make that point that they're going to some place called Farpoint.
Yeah.
And there is a space station there that is very mysterious.
Yeah, exactly.
So they hammer that home.
We're also immediately introduced into stupid Data.
Yes.
And here's the thing. So I mentioned this to you off camera while we're watching this. And I'm just going to bring this up now. Data had been around. He had been, number one, I don't know how many years it was between him being activated and him going to Starfleet Academy. He spent 4 years in Starfleet Academy. He spent another 3 years as an ensign on a ship called the Treatsy or the Trieste or something like that. And then another 12 years as a lieutenant on that same ship. So he was on that ship for 15 years. And yet it took like 2 years on the Enterprise for him to understand like senses like a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And because by season 3 he doesn't do the weird crap he does in the first batch.
He's a strange version of the character in the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons that I dislike watching the first 2 seasons, because a lot of the characters are kind of off, and Data particularly is like you call him, he's stupid Data. And
right.
it is fascinating that you went back and did the math that I had never really done before, that he'd been in Starfleet for so many years before, that he'd been on a ship before. And I've been thinking about it, so we were talking about it. And I think that maybe it just took him being on the Enterprise. But is that a reflection of just the horrible state of all the other officers in Starfleet?
Right.
Are all other officers in Starfleet just morons?
Well, okay.
And only the flagship of Starfleet has officers that are competent and actually human beings that he can learn from and grow.
If you look at the evidence kind of points to that.
Yeah.
Because you have, like, every time we see other officers. Okay, so literally in, like, one of the next episodes we're going to do, it's this ship that got drunk and blew the hatch on their ship.
Yeah.
And they all died, right?
Yeah.
The Enterprise, in multiple episodes across the series, will come across other ships that couldn't figure out what they were able to figure out.
Yeah.
So evidently and then there was that other guy that used to serve with O'Brien who was like hunting Cardassians, and he was like a crazy captain.
Super racist against Cardassians.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so maybe you said this phrase. You said this phrase while we were talking about it, and you said, did Data just fail upwards?
Yeah.
Like, was it him? Or was it just oh yeah, and then there was that other one where they were fighting the Romulans, and Data got transferred to that ship as captain, and his first officer immediately was like, I want off this ship because I hate androids. Yeah. I think you're not a good captain immediately. And he's like, denied, bro. Yeah. So maybe you're right. Maybe everybody's an idiot. Maybe everybody's terrible.
It really points to that, doesn't it? I mean, wow.
I mean, but then like you get Cisco, and he's amazing, like on Deep Space Nine. But then his ship ended up blowing up because, like, he wasn't even the captain on that ship that blew up in the Borg attack.
Sure. I mean, I think the interesting thing about the Star Trek universe is Roddenberry really wanted to set it up so that there were a lot of things that didn't exist in Star Trek that existed in the world that he dealt with.
Right, yeah.
And he used to be an LAPD officer. He saw a lot of racism. He saw a lot of sexism, and he sort of hated that and wanted to make a TV show that moved beyond those things and was very successful at it.
Yeah, yeah.
And wanted the next generation to continue on that legacy. But I think that within the context of Next Generation, you see episodes deal with that stuff, and it bleeds in from elsewhere in Starfleet. Because I think initially Roddenberry thought Starfleet should be a safe haven. All of Starfleet needs to be enlightened. Mm-hmm. Everybody who's in Starfleet should not be racist or sexist.
Right,
or all these other things.
Yeah.
But we see in the interactions of the Enterprise staff with other ships, it's not the case.
Yeah.
A lot of them are racist and sexist and just downright stupid.
Yeah. Which could explain Data being on another ship for 15 years.
Yeah.
And him not picking up any idea as to what, proverbs are.
Yeah. He doesn't understand play on words. Humor at all.
He doesn't at all.
In this episode, he doesn't know what the word snoop mean, which is fascinating.
Right, exactly. And so Picard, it's funny because you see growth, and I think it's probably a tribute to Patrick Stewart that you see growth in Picard's character, like over time, because he specifies in this episode, like, number one, he has no patience in this episode whatsoever. And he has a really weird aversion to loud sounds. Did you notice that? Like, whenever something is like, he's like, stop, shut that off.
Yeah.
Like, when somebody's talking too loud, he'll tell them to shut up.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why he doesn't like kids. But, so Picard immediately, like, Data just starts talking, and Picard immediately is like, okay, you need to stop now. Troy, who's a mess in this episode.
She is.
She kind of gets it together within, like, the first couple episodes. But she's a mess. She immediately senses some shit. We are introduced to Q's, like, so they're on their way to Farpoint. We're introduced to Q by way of, like, a weird blanket thing he puts, like, or a wall.
It's like a wall of perpendicular bars.
Yeah.
It's a weird effect.
Yeah, it's weird. And then so, like, the red alert stuff happens. In the first episode also, Picard had a really weird aversion to going on red alert. in like really serious situations.
Yeah.
And then there's an episode a little bit later on where he goes to Red Alert in a really not serious situation. It's when Lutan captures Tasha Yar.
Yes.
And he's like, go to Red Alert right now. It's like, it's a primitive planet. They're not going to do anything.
Well, yeah, he should also know that their culture is, that's a, you know, it's a thing that happens in their culture. He shouldn't like react to a Red Alert. I don't know.
Exactly. But in here, he's like, holy crap, this giant wall just happened in front of us, which defies space and time in physics, as far as I know. We don't want to go to Red Alert. We're going to go to Yellow Alert instead. I don't want to do like the serious one. I want to go to the more mellow alert status, please. So they go to a Yellow Alert. Q shows up in full cosplay.
Yeah.
From...
He cycles through a couple different cosplays.
Yeah. Well, first he's in... I don't know.
He's
what
like
it
a
is.
ship's captain.
Yeah. He's like... Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a pirate ship captain.
And he's talking in... Yeah. He's like a... Is he? Is that what? He's like a pirate? So. Yeah. Okay.
Like a conquistador almost?
Okay. Conquistador. That's... Yeah. That sounds right. He's talking in like sort of weird Shakespearean stuff. He's like thou and thee and stuff. One of the red shirt guys rolls up on him and Q freezes the crap out of him. He's got like a freezing power, right? So he does that to him, which I'm not really sure we see that again, or like in later episodes. And he tells in a very dramatic fashion, he says, go back home, go back to Earth, or you're all going to die out here. And so we go to commercial. At this point, Captain Picard is still on the bridge. Like, it just goes to commercial. We go back, and we're on the captain's log. And so, like, it's the voiceover. And he's talking about shit that's happening right now. Mm-hmm. And yet he hasn't left the scene of what's happening. So somehow, he, like, saw Q, interacted with him, and was like, captain's log.
It's the
fuck is happening right now?
It's the Star Trek equivalent of in the middle of emergency, him being like, let me just take a selfie. Like,
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. He's like, hold on a second. So anyways, I mean, this is a little thing. They do that a lot in season 1, though. Q then turns into a World War II dress soldier to sort of make his point. He's like, here's my point. Humans are terrible. They're savages.
Yes.
You're a savage race. I am from the Q, and you guys are not. You're about to be judged. At some point, he dresses up in like later on. Captain Picard calls the era the post-apocalyptic horror, which is a really cool name for it. But it's like a weird like military outfit, but like over to kind of Mad Max-ish, but a bit more formal.
It's very padded.
Yeah, it's all
metallic
padded.
looking, and
he looks soundproof.
Yeah,
yeah. And then he also has a really cool little thing that gives him bumps of what seems to be cocaine or something.
Something like that.
He's like, your military you used to have your military on drugs to fight your wars, which actually is kind of a cool concept.
Yeah, that time period is 2079 within the.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That, yeah.
So yeah, we're not. I mean, the way things are going right now, it's probably. So, anyways. Worf says that he wants to clean the bridge. My notes are way too extensive. Worf is like, I'm gonna fucking get rid of this guy. Tasha Yar immediately gets on top of that and says, "Yeah, no, I'm with Worf." Kind of foreshadowing how that's eventually going to go down, because Worf is kind of the more horny one to secure the Enterprise, and Tasha Yar just kind of she kind of falls into place. Let's see here. Q, who's dressed up as a military soldier, like takes a bump of the cocaine. Talks more about how savage humans are. Picard isn't really questioning Q much. He's just automatically defending humans.
Yeah.
He's not like, this is really weird. I don't know what this is all about, but could you explain more about where you're from even? Mm-hmm. He just immediately starts defending humanity, saying, we're not savages. We're good. We can stand up to any judgment. Q then leaves. Worf and Tasha Yar are both like, we need to shoot because like the Enterprise takes off. The little Q, the wall of Q balls up, and I think at that point, so they're deciding what they're gonna do. Picard asks Data. This is something that's really weird. He's like, hey. I want to separate the ship.
Saucer section.
So this thing, the plate, comes off of this.
The reasoning behind this design feature is that the Enterprise was a ship of exploration as opposed to a ship of war.
Right.
So, but it needed to be a ship that could handle itself in war, in battle. However, because there's families on there,
Yeah, a bunch of kids and shit.
Picard wants to keep those families safe, so he says, let's move all the families to this big saucer section right here.
Yeah.
We'll separate that, and then this section back here, which is has a separate battle bridge,
Yeah.
and is equipped for fighting, which honestly don't even know how that works because all the phasers and photon torpedoes come out from here.
Right,
so
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the rationale behind it.
Yeah.
This will be separate and can go fight, and if this blows up, at least all the families get saved because they run off.
They get to go on impulse power somewhere
Sure, yeah.
and find Earth in 80 years.
But he asked Data if they can do that at like maximum warp, which
Right.
doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's a horrible idea.
And Data even says, Data literally says that. He says, it's a really dangerous thing to do.
That's a bad idea at like half impulse, essentially, is what he says. So
Yeah.
like even at a fraction of a warp. But like maximum warp, which is approaching light speed, it's a terrible idea.
This is maybe my favorite part of the entire episode, this next part here. Picard thinks that Q might be monitoring their electronic communications.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, hey, everybody, we're about to do this shit. So he says, print out instructions and hand them out to people across the ship. We're literally in 2018, and we rarely use paper now.
I don't use paper at all anymore.
Exactly. Like you wrote it to write down your notes. But
I just like writing.
yeah, it's something new. It's something different to do. I find it very hard to believe that in the year whenever this is set, 2369, I think.
Yeah.
Or 2367, something like that. That they're gonna have like fax machines or paper printers, like HPs, just all over the place. Where there's we never get to see any of these printouts, by the way. So I don't know. Maybe there's a different form of paper in the future. I don't know. I just don't. I've never ever seen any paper in an episode of Star Trek Next Generation.
Well,
But
occasionally you see a book,
right? Yeah.
but it's a thing of antiquity.
It's a nostalgia thing, exactly. So, anyways, he says, "Yeah, print out some instructions and tell everybody this is what we're doing, because I don't want anybody I don't want Q to know that we're transmitting this electronic."
Also, that doesn't make any sense anyway, because if at the point that you need to contact everybody physically to give them the printout, why don't you just tell them?
Why don't you?
Why do you take the extra step to find paper, to load the printer, which probably hasn't been used in 50 or 60 years?
And just like dust comes ever. Like, when's the last time they had to use the printer? That doesn't make any sense. Anyways, let's see here. So the Enterprise runs for it. The giant wall turns into like a little ball, and then it chases them. It's going hella quick. They're like making sure everybody, it's very fast, very fast. Let's see here. He says, print out the message. We're going to do emergency saucer separation. Picard orders Worf to command the saucer section. Worf is not happy about that. He says, I am a Klingon. I mean, Worf kind of was just immediately Worf. Like, there was no,
Worf of all the characters is the one that comes into the show pretty much fully formed. And just gets better.
Yeah, exactly. And surprisingly, like when we meet Riker, there's not a whole lot of... Riker is Riker, and Riker actually kind of ends up being him too. But you're right, Worf is we already get Worf. He's already there. So anyways, Worf complains, but Picard says, just go to the saucer section, man. You can defend all those families if you want. Next up, all these people, it shows all the families going to the saucer section, and then like the real like fighters are going to the battle section. We get to see O'Brien for the first time.
Not named yet, but we see him.
Doesn't have a name, but again, like he's even acting like for a guy who literally only has the one like bit.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in the episode a little bit, but like number one, Colmini doesn't look any different here than he did like 10 years later on Deep Space Nine.
It's what, 40 years later now. 30 years later now, he still looks the same. He looks great.
Yeah, no, I know, exactly. It's crazy. I know. And I love, out of like all the people on Deep Space Nine, and even like Next Generation, except for maybe Patrick Stewart, Colmini continued to get all sorts of great roles.
Oh, he does great stuff.
He did so many. He's done, and he continues to do. I never saw I saw like the first episode of Hell on Wheels.
Oh yeah, I never watched that.
He's really good in it. I really didn't get the vibe of the show. Like it just wasn't my thing. But he's really good in it. So anyways, he shows up. He's doing navigation. The con on the battle bridge. They fire torpedoes back behind them. I guess as a distraction or something, while they separate the saucer section from the battle section. They make a really big deal about this. It's something you only see, I think, one other time. Maybe they did it in the movie when they destroyed the Enterprise.
It's definitely less than 5 times throughout the entirety of the Star Trek Next Generation.
Like 100 some odd episodes. Like 140
and
episodes. Movies. They did it a very small handful of times. But they make a big deal about it. They play the entire like theme music during it too. And everybody's like in awe that it's happening. It goes fine. Like there wasn't even any tension of like, oh, it's shaking up because we shouldn't be doing this. It's totally cool. Everything's fine. Let's see here. Anyways, the saucer goes on its merry way. Tasha Yar starts talking about fighting the Q ship. Tasha Yar completely loses her head at every situation where you really need to be cool. And this is kind of thematic for the first couple episodes as well. She just goes off, and I'm like, you're the head of security on the Enterprise. Like, maintain your cool.
Yeah.
And Picard has to check her left and right. It's kind of weird. Anyways, Picard issues out a surrender notice to the Q ship. He says, we surrender. So Q takes that and says, okay, I'm going to take you to this courtroom here. That's like the 2079 post-apocalyptic horror courtroom where there's like a whole bunch of like, there's this weird sort of a peanut gallery of like all sorts of weird.
So this scene takes place back in the 2079 of Q's last cosplay.
Yeah.
Of that post-apocalyptic police officer who's hooked on the whatever it is that he's snorting.
Yeah.
And those police officers are there, and it's a judgment scene.
Right.
That's taking place in this human setting from the Terran human timeline of 2079.
Right. Yeah. And Q, of course, is the judge. We don't really see him. Oh, no, we do see him kind of next. Troy makes this warning to Picard. She's like, hey, look, this shit's real. It's not a facsimile. It's not a fantasy. Those guards over there with the guns and the drugs, this is real. So be careful. It isn't like a holiday.
So she's getting sensory input from these individuals, from these characters.
Right.
That say, these aren't holographic projections.
Right.
This is like a real deal.
And she does it consistently with like a cry face.
Yeah.
Every line of dialogue Troy delivers, she looks like she's on the verge of tears in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Q makes his grand entrance. He's got like this red and black garb with like a giant hat thing.
Very empirical outfit.
Yeah, he's like on a big crane chair thing. The guard, Q tells the crew to kneel. They say, no, it's not going to happen. The guard tells them to kneel. Tasha Yar checks the guard, like tosses him to the ground. Q tells the guard he's out of order for not being able to check her. And then the guard takes a bump of cocaine or whatever it is. And then the other guard comes over here and blasts him.
Blows him away immediately.
It's like with 30 bullets.
Yeah.
But there's no blood because it's like, TV.
Well, they don't show him getting blasted. They show the other guard come up and fire at him off camera.
They show them like drag him away though.
They put a rope around his foot and drag him away.
Yeah. So anyways, Q says they're going to get a fair trial. Tasha gets up and starts yelling at Q again. Oh, and then she gets frozen for her troubles.
Yeah.
Again, she needs to keep cool.
Yeah.
I mean, why? You're supposed to be
That's
protecting the captain at this point.
It's terrible.
That was good. No, it's good. That's why we do this. Let's see here. So Picard then, I think he like, there's a lot, Picard, he's very dramatic in this scene.
Yeah.
And so much so they do this weird like vignette thing where like half his face is lit.
That was
and,
very distracting. I couldn't tell
focus.
if that was a lighting choice or if it was just a bad production error.
I think somebody sneezed on the camera.
Yeah.
Or somebody was like, this will get that stain off.
Because they would cut to the opposite shot, or because he's talking to Q back and forth.
Right.
They cut to the Q shot. Q is perfectly well lit, and then they cut back to Picard, and just a top quarter of his face is just in shadow in it.
It's like they had him framed perfectly at first, and they're like, okay, this works perfect. We can see like it's supposed to be dramatic, and then like at the last second, they're like, okay, we're about to roll. Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
We're good to go. Anyways, Picard appeals to Q. He's like, look, dude. Come on, you said that we're going to get like a fair trial. You're freaking us out here. And then Q's like, okay, you're cool. And then he unfreezes Tasha. So she lives to be on another 20 episodes. Let's see here. Q makes Picard read the charges. There's like a little book of charges. And Picard's like, I don't see anything here, man. There's no charges here. And then and Q gets kind of, the guards put their guns against their heads. And Q says, if you don't read these charges off, no, he says, Picard, if you don't say you're guilty, you're all going to be executed right now. So he says, we are guilty provisionally. I'll say that provisionally. And Q is like, ooh, okay, that's cool. What's the provision? What do you mean? So Picard goes on to admit there's plenty of evidence that humans have been savage, but, test us as we are now.
Yeah.
To see if we're still savage. Then Q says, this Farpoint episode is going to make for a good judgment on you. So I actually kind of like the idea that, number one, this concept is a pretty far out one. It's a pretty far out there one. Like, they could have done the pilot as just the Farpoint mission, which I think was a solid sci-fi concept and a sci-fi mystery in itself. But then you also have the added pressure of, like, this weird godlike guy Q, who isn't nearly as, like, mischievous. Like, he's much more sinister here than he is, like, later.
Yeah.
Sort of putting them to the test. I kind of like that there's the additional stakes. I thought it was kind of cool.
No, I agree. And you have characters like this, sort of semi-omnipotent characters with superpowers in the original show. I think that when they entered into the Next Generation, they wanted to sort of quantify that and have an entire race of them.
Right.
And I think that it's definitely a nod to Arthur C. Clarke's third law of, or third adage, third law of science fiction, or advanced technologies, it should be.
Okay.
Which is that any advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you see that a lot cited in science fiction. And I think that entering into the Next Generation, they definitely want to play with that idea, which is Star Trek is so advanced from us. As they explore and as they find new things out about the universe and the galaxy that surrounds us, what do they encounter that's so far advanced from them, and how does that affect them, and how can we play with that? It's a very pointed move to have them instantly encounter a new race, a representative of a new race, who is essentially godlike, who's so far advanced, but there's no way for us or them to tell, Picard, I think, is a very reasonable man, even in this first episode. There's no way for him to tell what are these people doing. There's other episodes further down the line where they have characters who are manipulating planets and also trying to manipulate Starfleet with essentially magic tricks.
Right, yeah. That episode that comes to mind with the Lady God.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I just watched that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. That's a really good one, yeah.
So they're always playing with that, but the race of Q is the first time in Star Trek where they said this is an entire race, essentially a species that's so far advanced beyond any existing race in the Star Trek continuity that they seem essentially godlike.
Yeah.
So
I think also in some of the novels and maybe comic books, they had Q interact with some of the original series godlike beings.
Yeah, they had. There was a. Oh yeah, I think they did that.
Who was the big godlike? What was his name? I'm not a big guy on the original series.
Well, there's just a couple different ones. I mean, there's one. There was one that was like an omnipotent character that ended up being like a child from an omnipotent race that wasn't really defined. And it was one of those things where he essentially kidnapped the crew of the original Enterprise and or the old show Enterprise, and was using them like toys. And then his parents showed up, and
who did the god end up being in Star Trek V? Remember the Terribles, like that awful movie? They were like over the center of the galaxy. And there was like a god character there.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was a piece of crap. Anyways, Q sends them back to the battle bridge. Everybody is like, holy crap, I can't believe we just went through. O'Brien's just chilling there on his Facebook. And Picard's like, hey, what's our course? Alt tab. It's the same thing it's been, man. We're just going.
So, I mean, from O'Brien's perspective, they were either zapped away for half an hour or some period of time, and he was just sitting there doing nothing, or it was instantaneous.
I'm thinking it was...
At which point he's like, why are you asking me that? Nothing has happened.
I'm thinking it was probably in between seconds. You know, it was
Okay.
probably like, it was
So
probably
why?
like.
But why? If it was any period of time, why would he not be like? Why did you guys just blink out of existence for 5 seconds?
Are you going to explain
What's
what just
going
happened?
on? Yeah.
So I'm thinking it was probably instantaneous. They they got whisked away, and then time resumed when they came back. In which case he's probably like, is this a test or something?
Yeah.
I know I'm new to this shit, but what the hell? Anyways, we come back from commercial, and we get our first glimpse of Commander Riker, who is visiting the administrator guy for the Farpoint station. His name is Zorn. His title, I think, is Grappler.
Grappler Zorn, almost like a wrestler name.
That is
fun.
That
Yeah.
is, I mean, Grappler is a wrestler.
Grappler's a wrestler,
I mean,
yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, the planet that they're on is Deneb 4,
Okay, yeah.
and that is where the Farpoint station was constructed, allegedly by the people that Grappler Zorn represents.
Right. This was one of my favorite scenes. Also, was when we first get Riker. Zorn offers up some fruit. He says, "Would you like
Like an Earth delicacy.
an Earth
He's
delicacy?"
got a lovely bowl of fruit. With
Yeah, it's
bananas
awesome.
and grapes, and it looks delicious.
So Riker and look, I can relate. When I was a little kid, my parents loved to relate this story to embarrass me. I went to a birthday party at McDonald's because that was like a really cool place to have birthday parties back in the 80s.
That's where you had birthday parties back in the 80s. Yeah.
And they were like, "Hey, everybody gets a hamburger," and I was like, "I kind of want a cheeseburger." I was like 5, and I said that. Well, Riker says, "I don't want a banana." He said, "Do you have an apple in there? Do you have an apple in there?" Like, you can't just go to the market around the corner and get some, I don't know, get an apple there. He's like, "Do you have an apple here?"
Well, it's one of those weird things where he saw the bowl of fruit and Grappler Zorn pushes a bowl of fruit towards him as he's
Yeah.
asking the question.
Right.
He's like, he doesn't know the entire contents of the bowl of fruit.
Yeah.
He says, "Oh, if you have an apple."
If you have an
And
apple,
he looks
I'll
and
eat
he
it in
realizes
front of
there's
you.
not an apple in there, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm fine. Don't worry."
And then he starts talking. He's like, "The hell? There's a whole bowl of red deliciouses
Yeah.
in there. Red delicii? I don't know what they're called." And he's like, I totally didn't say that. I was like, "Oh yeah, we have this other selection here."
The bowl of apples definitely was not there.
Instead of Riker being like, because Riker totally takes note of this later. He's like, later on, he's like, Crusher, Beverly, this bowl of apples just fucking appeared right in front of me,
Yeah.
dude. And so he registers that this thing wasn't there before. And yet, what does he do? He doesn't say, "I don't know where that's been."
Yeah.
I'm not going to. He's always like, "Oh, this looks amazing."
He takes it and immediately bites into it.
He just
knows
Yeah.
that bowl of apples manifested out of nowhere. At some foundational level, he's like, that bowl of apples definitely was not there, but I wanted an apple. I'm going to have to eat that apple.
The only way, maybe he thinks, hey, the only way I'm going to understand anything about this place, maybe this place is so mysterious. This apple, if I eat it, it'll tell me. Oh. Anyways, I mean, it's good he's eating an apple. They're good for you.
Apples are very good for you.
Yeah.
A lot of fiber. But you just got to figure if something manifests that you want out of thin air.
It might not be the real thing.
Yeah, and also it might be there to try to hurt you in some way. Like that's when
Right.
somebody slips you a roofie.
Yeah,
You're like, or
exactly.
you walk into a party and you're like, "Oh, can I have a beer?"
Yeah.
And some guy named Declan walks up and he's like, "I got a beer for you." And you're like, "Okay, I'll take this. You look like
Yeah.
a nice guy." And then
Yeah.
you wake up the next day.
It's
with,
got a weird fizz going to it
Yeah.
or something. Yeah, exactly. So Riker is probably lucky he didn't wake up the next morning in a, all like pruny wet for some reason with
in a
like
gutter somewhere in Deneb 4
exactly.
with his pants around his ankles.
Feel a little sore. Anyways, yeah. So then Riker's like, okay, that's good. Riker leaves. Zorn starts yelling at nobody. He's yelling at somebody. We don't know who it is, but he's just yelling at them. He's like, no, screw off. Leave me alone. Riker meets up with Wesley Crusher and his mom, Beverly Crusher, the doctor of the Enterprise. Wes immediately makes an excuse for Beverly Crusher being kind of a dick. He's like, "You'll have to excuse my mom, Commander Riker. She's not really polite to men she doesn't know," or something like that. Because she is being kind of rude. Because, number one, Riker is like her superior officer, so she should be like, "Yes, sir." But instead, she's like, "Okay, whatever, go away. You got magic apples?" While she's looking at some fabric, she's like, oh, you don't have a really ugly, gaudy gold type fabric? And then she turns to look at Riker, who's bugging her about the apple. And then she turns back, and it's just there. And she's like, oh, wow, you have this really ugly pattern that I was looking for. I'll take the entire bolt, charge it to the Enterprise, which I still have no idea what currency the actual Enterprise uses or Federation uses, which is weird. But Riker's like, see? That wasn't there before, was it? And she's like, I totally believe you now. Maybe, it's not that they were just not paying attention. I don't know what the deal was. Anyways. Wes gives the I have all these little notes here. Wes gave the dude like a total stink. The guy selling the fabric. He totally gave him the stink eye. He was like, I don't trust you. Like the kid doesn't trust the guy, but Riker and Beverly crush it do. Like, how do you know this fabric isn't going to turn into something like really fucked up?
Well, I mean, this gets to another question that I had, which was, I mean, if these people previously didn't have the capabilities to design this amazing space station that sort of appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Which is the basic premise of them going to Deneb 4 to look at the Farpoint station.
Yeah.
Do they have warp capability? are they a space traveling race?
Yeah.
And if not, do they understand that there's a ship orbiting their planet currently? Even if they do, does the entire race understand that? To the point that some random cloth seller at the market will be like, "Oh, the Enterprise. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Crusher, I'll send that bill right up."
Yeah, how does that work? Like, do they just Bluetooth up with whatever ship is in orbit? I don't know.
Like, I was just in Israel, and I went to Jerusalem, and there was an amazing market there called the Mahane Yehuda Market, and it's great. You just walk around, and they have amazing like spices and nuts and falafel that'll knock your socks off, and it's great and everything. And most of the vendors will take like credit cards. Yeah. But by and large, you have to have the local currency, like shekels.
Okay, sure, yeah.
So I just feel like it's weird. Like if I just walked in there and to me, the correlation would be like if I walked into that market in Jerusalem and I was like, oh, I'll take 6 pounds of nuts, just bill it to my hotel room. Bill it to Jeff Davidson at the Prima King's Hotel. Yeah. Just do that. And they're like, what are you talking about? Right. I need money.
Right. Well, no, you do pose kind of an interesting question because, like, from what we learned later on, the Vulcans, they didn't hit us up until we were a warp civilization, until we figured out, literally, Zephyr and Cochrane took that like little missile, that rocket thing, not missile, like a rocket booster thing, and he turned into a warp engine that could like do, and they were like, okay, they're ready, we're going to talk to him. Like, is there a way you can get around being a warp civilization and still make contact with like the Federation? Can you be like, hey, so we can't fly out there, but we know you're out there. We totally like have telescopes that can see all your shit that's going on. Yeah. So come on over here. I may be assuming that that's like a situation.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, I feel like we never got confirmation on that.
No.
Wes then reveals that Picard brought his dead dad's body home.
Yeah, that's bleak.
That's how he knows, because Riker's like, oh, you know Captain Picard by his first name, Jean-Luc? And she's like, yeah. And then Wes is like, yeah. He brought my dad home in a body bag. So that was a bummer. Geordi then shows up, which makes it even worse that Picard treats Wes like shit.
Yeah.
Geordi runs up on Riker and starts giving him some pivotal information. And for some reason, Riker finds it necessary to be like, is this an official report?
Yeah, Riker has to pull rank at that time.
And Geordi's like, oh, God, yes. And he gets all in normal.
Well, I don't understand why Riker has to pull rank at that particular moment when he outranked Dr. Crusher, too.
Yeah, right.
Who treated him terribly.
And he's hounding her. Like
it's confusing, the reactions that they have to each other as they meet.
Yeah, it's all
when
weird.
they are clearly all about to be crew members on the flagship of the entire Federation.
Yeah.
And they will meet each other and react to each other initially with something that ranges in between just outright hostility or confusion and total ignorance.
Right, yeah.
Where I'm like, how do you not know who you're going to be on station with? Like, how do you not do a minimal amount of research?
Well, okay.
Or how do you have never heard of a story of like, okay, I've heard of Commander Riker.
So like
he was on that ship.
You're exactly
he's
right.
a great guy.
Earlier in the episode, Commander Riker says the crew is half missing or it's not fully staffed. including we don't have a first officer. However, I understand a very skilled officer named Commander Riker. Why wouldn't you interview your first officer?
Yeah,
like,
that's bizarre.
That's been a thing like later on where it's like, oh, I've got all these candidates. I don't know who I'm going to choose. I don't know where. I forget where, but I remember that happened at some point. But yeah, it's weird that Picard wouldn't be like, I want to know exactly who my freaking first officer is going to be, because he treats Riker like an asshole. So anyways, Geordi says Picard wants you to beam up. So Riker does.
Riker also beams up in profile, which is weird. This is a little. I don't know why I noticed these things.
Yeah, that is
but
weird.
Usually, I mean, like I feel like 99.9% of the time when people beam up in the entire continuity of Star Trek, it's just
Facing the camera.
Facing the camera.
Yeah, exactly.
And Riker beamed up and was in profile, and I was like, "That's weird."
Yeah, that was a lot.
Why
I can see that because I remember that too. So anyways, Riker shows up. Picard doesn't even turn around and look at him. I don't know. I guess, I mean, it was by the end of their first encounter, like Picard just wanted to test the shit out of him or something, right? Or maybe Picard's like, man, Riker's really tall, so like this dude's 6'4". I need to cut him down to size the first chance I get. So anyways, Riker shows up on the battle bridge. Picard doesn't turn around and take a look at him, but he does say, go watch these clips from the first half of this episode.
Yeah.
And then Riker goes and sits down and watches a clip show of the first chunk of the episode. This confused the living crap out of me. Because why wasn't this like one security camera up there as opposed to like every angle that the TV show evidently is all just secret cameras hidden all over the bridge of the Enterprise? That's where they're getting this footage from?
This is also the only time that I remember in Star Trek: The Next Generation when they convey information that way. Like
Right.
every other episode in
Right.
the entire rest of the show,
Right.
if they're like, "Oh, this thing happened," or "You need to look up this information about this guy," it's very sensical.
Right,
It's like, "Oh, here's a picture of the guy.
Exactly.
Here's information in text." There might be some video or audio of a log or something like that.
Right, yeah.
It's not like, why am I just sitting here watching an episode? It doesn't make any sense.
Did the Enterprise have like an audio visual team? Do they have like an editing bay where somebody's like, oh man, we got to get all that dock footage from the bridge earlier and cut this for specifically a Riker, as opposed to somebody just saying, hey, look, man, this weird godlike figure showed up. We had to separate because his big ball was following us. That's where we're at now. We're about to be judged based on our actions here. No, because here's the thing. The clip show that Riker saw, like we saw a bunch of it. And it's completely like without context.
Yeah.
It's like Q shows up, so Riker's obviously like, wait, hold on, who's that guy?
Oh, yeah.
Where did he come? Did he say where he's coming from? I'm not getting the whole story here.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no way to make heads or tails of it.
Right, exactly.
There's not like and nobody gives Riker any actual information too. They're just like, just watch the thing. Just go.
Exactly.
It's like he's a child and they want to sit him in front of cartoons.
Yeah, they're
like,
they're at the Hobby Lobby, and they've got back in the '80s. And my mom used to just go to take me to the Hobby Town, whatever it's called. She'd just go in there and set me in a little like the little booth that put a quarter in and it plays I don't know the Mighty Mouse for like a half hour.
Yeah, when I was a kid, when my parents would take us up to Lake Tahoe, they had an arcade, which was amazing.
Awesome.
But within the arcade, they had a video room.
Yeah.
Where they had like a VHS, a Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
So you go watch that for a while while the parents are off drinking.
You know what I just realized? Especially given that it was the 80s and there was kidnappings all over the place. The little video booth that they had that aired the cartoons at the Hobby Lobby was right next to the front entrance. So as a parent, you walk in, you put your kid in this thing, right? It's a giant target for an unsupervised child.
Oh, yeah.
So anybody can be like, hey, the kid's mine now.
Yeah.
While your parent is like clear across the warehouse looking for their buttons. Anyways, so they say, this was interesting too. Again, this is just the minutia is hilarious. They're like, the saucer section is going to be back here in 51 minutes, right? Riker sits down and watches the clip show, which doesn't take more than like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
He gets up from that. He goes into Picard's office. They have a conversation that lasts maybe 5 minutes. Yeah. And they say, the saucer section's here. Well, that was a long 51 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyways, Picard then says, Riker, you're going to do a manual saucer reconnect.
Yeah.
And Riker's like, fuck, man. Okay, right on. He goes in there. And it's not I mean, do you consider this a manual reconnect when he's just sitting there saying...
Well, he's essentially piloting it by ordering everybody else to do it.
Right, exactly.
Which I guess is manual. It's not. They're not relying on the auto dock feature.
Right.
They're not saying, the ship. Let's connect A to B. The ship can do it itself. Like this is the 21st century. Most planes that we're on are flown by and large not by people.
Yeah.
And landed by and large not by people.
Yeah.
So, so a spaceship in the 23rd century is going to be similar to that.
So, anyways, he pulls it off because he's a stud. Picard loves it. Picard is like, okay, you're cool now. They talk in private, and Picard, instead of really focusing on, hey, man, we have to really watch our backs because we're being judged. I don't know about this godlike race. He doesn't really say any of that. He says, listen, dude, I fucking hate kids. I'm on a ship.
That's essentially the first point that Picard makes to Riker that's not of critical nature. That's his introduction, essentially.
Yeah.
That's not like, oh my god, all this shit's going on. Get up to speed with this crazy godlike guy who's like threatening us. Okay, you're up to speed that?
Yeah.
Now, do this pissing contest that's unnecessary at best and dangerous at worst.
Yeah.
And manually dock this saucer section back. Do that. Now, by the way, I hate kids. Now that you got all that other shit, just know I really don't like kids. So just keep all the kids away from me. I don't know why they put me on. Why am I a captain on a ship with a bunch of kids? I'm really upset about it. Just keep the kids away from me, please. I can't stand kids.
I just like it. He's like, they pitched the idea to Picard. So here's the deal. Flagship of the Federation. Awesome. Great. 1,100 people. Tons of kids.
How long does he think about it? He's obviously like, he wants to be a captain.
He
wants to be the captain of the flagship. But then they're like, you're going to explore everything? You're an explorer?
You can be back on the shit-heel Stargazer. Oh, wait, no, you blew that one up.
Yeah.
That one's dead. So now
Picard
you get the flagship.
kind of failed upwards, too.
He got court-martialed.
Yeah.
You're right. He got court-martialed for the Stargazer. And as far as I know, he didn't captain anything between that and the flagship and the Enterprise.
Maybe the Enterprise isn't the flagship. Maybe this is what we're discovering.
I think you're right, man. I think you're right. Anyways, so yeah, and it's the funny thing is he doesn't even say keep the kids away from me. He says, Riker, it's your job to convince people that I'm not an asshole.
Yeah.
Because he says, as a captain, I need to project an aura of geniality. So it's your job to make sure I do that.
Yeah.
Well, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
How about that? Like, how about just don't be a dick to kids?
Yeah, that'd be great if Riker that was Riker's retort. She's like, I think not being a dick starts with you, bro. Like, why don't you work on that?
Exactly. Do that first. Maybe don't agree to captain a ship of families.
Yeah.
Anyways, Riker, what is he going to do? Of course, he says, okay, cool. I'm down with that. Picard gets super happy about that and says, welcome to the Enterprise. I got my guy. Riker's all happy about that. Cut to Geordi in sickbay getting his eyes checked. We're introduced to this idea that we never really come across again, that whenever he uses the visor, he's in pain.
Yeah.
This is a bummer of a situation. And she's like, you can't use painkillers, you can't use this. And he's like, okay, yeah, no, I don't even know why I came here. So we're introduced to this idea that we never really get to see again. Riker gets to the actual bridge now. He asks to see Data. He wants to see Data. Worf says, Data's not here. He's with a member of the Enterprise A. Then we have Data and...
he's with an admiral.
He's with an admiral. Yeah. So Leonard McCoy, Bones, played by DeForest Kelley, in some fairly well done.
Not bad.
Not bad. Old person makeup.
Supposed to be 135, 140 years old.
Right, exactly. And they actually have a really, really cool... This is a really great scene.
It's a great little exchange.
Yeah, it is. So that ended the first half of Encounter at Farpoint. And then it picks back up with Q showing up. Let's see here. Oh, we're at an hour. So we're going to cut this episode so we don't have like a massive 2-hour episode of the Four Lights podcast. So we're going to cut it here. And then in the second episode next week, we'll pick up with the second half of Encounter at Farpoint.
Great.
I figured that would probably be the case. I didn't really think it all the way through, but that's what we're going to do. So thanks for tuning in to this first episode. Next week, we'll have the second half of Encounter at Farpoint. These days, it just airs as 2 episodes. So until then, we'll talk to you guys later.